What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Macro Monday on CoinLogic TV. I am your host, The Logical Dude, and we have again with us Taskmaster4450. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm just Rosie, man. Rosie. Always looking forward to Mondays.
Another Monday. So, the past week, we've had a lot of reports of all kind of stuff going on, man. We got Elon trying to settle in with Twitter. He's got all kind of madness going on there. We've got diesel shortages, which is actually worrying me more than anything. And just same old crazy chaos, man. So
I saw a headline that Meta is going to lay off employees,
I
and
saw that too.
I was wondering, do you think Zuckerberg is going to have the same backlash against him that Elon received for firing Twitter employees? I mean, it's just
Well,
it's
I think like, financial layoffs, in that aspect, I don't know if they're going to go marching against him like they're going and marching against Elon. I mean, it's
I mean, Twitter's losing $4 million a day. I mean,
yep.
it's like, what do the people expect him to just keep forking over money? I mean, I don't know. It's like I mean, it's obviously Elon left the plantation and fell out of favor, but it's with all that he's building, he's not a guy to really piss off. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, for sure, man. And he's the only one that's trying, that's tried to kind of get involved politically, and he got slammed on that. But I get he's trying to do good things, I know you're a fan, you're an investor in Tesla and that kind of thing. I'm I like what he's doing, and I'm actually going to be looking into getting Starlink when I move back to the farm and that kind of thing. But I'm still on the fence. Like I'm kind of wondering if he's really on our side, or that kind of
He
thing.
has no side. I mean, I
I'm
that's
kind
where
of thinking that's kind of where he's at. Is
people
he's
start taking sides, and it's like, what side are you on? And it's like, well,
I'm
where
on
I
the side
stand
of the
for this.
people.
Well, what do the people stand for? You people out by you stand for lunacy. I mean, it's
That's true.
Europeans stand for lunacy, and that's why they're going to be freezing their nuts off this winter because they're for lunacy. Elon's about making money. He's built about transition to sustainable energy. He's about improving humanity. He takes on major challenges. Um, he understands technology. He understands network effects. He understands adoption curves. And, he's building 4 or 5 premises. And, make no mistake about this X app that he's looking to build. I mean, everybody says, well, why didn't he just go to Hive? Elon does not give a shit about decentralization. He does not. He does not give a shit about regulation. He is used to adhering to regulation. He's in the automobile business.
Yeah.
You got a lot of regulation. Will the X app be successful? Yes, I am convinced of it. He will turn that into a financial powerhouse. It has nothing to do with Twitter and freedom of speech, any of that shit. It's a financial powerhouse that he wanted to build PayPal into 22 years ago. He wrote this plan. Peter Thiel and guys like that shot it down because, and they probably were right, the world wasn't ready for it. But he's going to do that with XApp. And that's why I keep writing and putting together these articles that we need to start really building this shit on Hive and forget the social media. It's the financial, the payment systems, the banking, the lending, all that aspects tied into social media. And social media is a great onboarding tool. But that's not it. If you're just looking at being, oh, I want to be my microblogging app, or I want to be my little tribe and do blogging, or I want to do this, or you're looking at it in the wrong way. You better be looking at it the same way Elon does. And that's where every application on Hive, I'm convinced, needs to be looking at integrating everything into it they can.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
redundancy.
Yeah, and it is. And I mean, that's kind of like what I'm doing with blockchains essentially, I'm trying to do every piece of everything that I can incorporate into it. I'm trying to, yes, it's overcomplicating things at some point, but at the same time, it's it's putting functionality out there for people to use, so, and I,
Exactly.
and thanks to some feedback from people that aren't as technically savvy or whatever as, as I am and that kind of thing. And I'm nowhere near on the level that some of these, developers, especially on, on Hive or in these other ecosystems are on. But it brings me back down to a level. It's like, okay, we are still, still dealing with, you know the masses here, and we have to make things a little more simplified. So, but trying to integrate as much functionality as possible. That's where I
Yeah,
think we
and that's
I think
where
that's kind of where we're having a hard time finding balance in this space is, like UI versus
it,
functionality.
well, and that's the problem is most of the people I see involved in blockchain development, most of them are not UI designers. So
That's
what you
me.
have
Yeah.
is they make these clunky UIs that make no sense to people, and they're slow and they don't flow well, and that's what has to change is these teams or whatever have to get at least input from people who know how to design UIs because you think of an app, just a basic app. Think of Facebook. Think of all the features that Facebook has in its app. I mean, it is far beyond any
It's huge.
feature that we have. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never used the Facebook app, but I imagine it's probably fairly intuitive. It's easy to use. It's free flowing. You can find what you want, and after a little while,
Not really.
you get used to it.
Yeah.
Um, it's like anything else. It's going to be difficult in the beginning and being new. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's things they can improve on the user
and that
experience.
and that's the thing with Facebook is they've got so much jam packed into it that's like you try to go and find something in your menus and you kind of get lost, and it's like trying to find groups and stuff like that. They get all clustered all up in your menu and everything. That's just and I'm a picky UI guy, man. I spent 8 years with Apple, training little old ladies in Florida, how to use their iPhones. And, so I'm having to like teach, people how to use this. So I understand the importance of UI on
Ease
that,
of use is vital for the masses. And
it really
but
is, man.
the thing is if you get the feature set in there, some people will figure out how to use it, and then you can work on streamlining it, easing it. Like Leo Finance is doing, they're redoing their whole front
Yeah.
end.
Well, it's what
Okay,
we're doing
so
with blockchains.
sometimes you have to do those rebuilds, but you get them out there, you get the apps in there, you get the features in the apps, you get all that going. And, I mean, that's what Elon's going to do. He's going to start to build these financial platforms, and they may not be real intuitive to start, but I mean, Elon's going to take on Rocket Mortgage, in my opinion, and Quicken Loans and all of that stuff because why shouldn't he?
Yeah,
And
right.
I believe he's going to have forex trading, and you're going to have like E-Trade or Scottrade type capabilities where you can set up a brokerage account. And again, Elon does not give a shit if he has to take Twitter and go file it under the banking regulations. He just doesn't care. He'll go do that and say, "Okay, we adhere to your regulations as a bank, and here we are." And he'll hire a ream of attorneys who can and regulator ex regulators who work for him, make sure they're in compliance, and he'll operate like Scottrade or E-Trade and operate like Rocket Mortgage and operate like Wells Fargo and whatever the fuck else he can think of. And
Basically
that's
do what Jack failed to do,
well,
so
what Jack failed to do, what Zuckerberg failed to do, what
yeah.
most of these tech companies failed to do is they did fail to integrate fintech in. Zuckerberg tried a little bit with marketplaces, and actually Zuckerberg was very astute with the idea of Libra and Diem, and getting ahead of that curve. Of
Yeah.
course, he got the backlash
Shut
to the
down. Yeah.
point that he said, I just, I'm not going to take on all these fights, and coinciding with probably other fights they had, there was no need to piss off regulators even more. But that's really the direction things are going. That's the direction Hive is going. That's the direction the economics of the world are going. And if entities don't look in that direction, I think it's a major failure. I don't believe you're going to have on your phone in 10 years or whatever that fuck the device is, if it's still a phone, but whatever we're using, and you're going to have a bazillion apps. You're going to have one app that does it all. Maybe you'll integrate a few other apps, or you'll have some secondary apps that are very specific to you if you're into music or something
Yeah.
niche like that. But the primary, I mean, you're going to go to one place, and I think Elon's going to do that, and that'll be it's a warning shot to Facebook. It's a warning shot to Bank of America. It's a warning shot to Rocket Mortgage. It's a warning shot to all these companies, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of it's where I was hoping. I'm hoping that eventually we get with Hive, and because my Hive keychain app on my phone is down in like my main app area kind of thing at the bottom, and because I go in there pretty much there, Brave browser, and that's pretty much it at this point. I've got some of my other crypto apps that I have to go into for whatever reason or another. But yeah, I mean, eventually we're going to get down to that kind of level. Now, when I was working with Apple and when I was a part of the whole Apple Cash launch, I was one of the first, advisors for the Apple Cash program. That was fun. Oh man, they did that so wrong in my opinion. And what irked my butt is because like I was like in the depths of like my mining, and I was in hard learning crypto, and I was getting into building coin logic and all this kind of stuff on the side. And man, when they came out with Apple Cash, I was so excited to hear like the concept, but then when I heard like how they were working and who they were working with on the back end, Green Dot Bank for the Apple Cash stuff, that is just absolute garbage. And then Goldman Sachs for the Apple Card. I mean, come on, they could have done so much better though. But that's Tim Cook, blowing down the barrel of good old corporate banking systems. If Steve were still alive, I think that Steve would have gone the route of Apple, some kind of Apple coin or something like that for the Apple Cash stuff. So I mean, they tried to do that whole payment integration, I think, and as far as like some of their features, they've done really well with it. But yeah, I mean, that's an example of companies just totally going the wrong way. And
Well,
PayPal.
it's also an example of companies being forced into it. I mean,
Yeah.
as much as I don't like the existing financial system, you're foolish if you're a corporation not to integrate it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like you look at J.P. Morgan, you look at Goldman Sachs, you look at what they're involved in, and this is where people, crypto people are just as dumb as the environmentalists and the green people. And let me explain. No, I'm
No,
serious.
please do. I love it. No, that's awesome.
Because it's all the same thing. It's technology. Now,
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind at some point we will replace fossil fuel with renewable energy. At some point.
At some point.
It's not going to be next week. It's certainly
No,
not going to be 2030 or 2035. The technology's not there. Probably won't be in my lifetime.
probably won't
But
be in
at
my lifetime. Yeah.
some point, it will happen.
Hmm.
Now, does that mean that we should stop and that the process should not be undertaken? Of course not. It should be. But the simple fact of the matter, and even the EIA says that by 2035, renewable energy will be up astronomically, both wind and solar. But so will fossil fuel consumption because overall energy use is going up exponentially over the next 20, 25 years. And the problem with crypto, I believe ultimately we will replace the existing financial system. It's
Yeah.
just not happening tomorrow. We
No.
are not going to take the banks out tomorrow. And actually, I wrote an article this morning because the banks, if they had half a brain, they'd be our allies because guess what? Cryptocurrency and the commercial banking system both have the same enemy, CBDCs, or retail CBDCs to be exact, because they're both a threat to cryptocurrency and the commercial banking system. Because with a digital wallet, you don't need a bank account.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, turning to your enemy isn't the best idea, but the bottom line is cryptocurrency is a lot less of a threat to the banks and governments. Governments are a lot more powerful than crypto. And at least with crypto, you can fight crypto in the market. If the governments turn against banks, then what do? You're kind of screwed. Now, obviously, banks are bigger than governments because the international banking system, but it can make life very, very, very difficult. And so the problem I have with most people is they don't understand technology. They don't understand the time of technology and technology adoption, technology integration. And I use the example, if when Facebook bought out Oculus in 2013 or 2014, if we said, okay,
Yeah.
by 2030, all communication will have to be in VR, that would have been a great goal, but it would have been impossible to reach
Oh
because,
yeah.
as we know, the communication systems can't handle it. The computing cannot handle it. The
Mm-mm.
networks can't handle it. Storage can't handle it. It can't. Couldn't be handled. Um, no, if, now you could have passed all the laws you want. You weren't going to reach it. The technology in totality wasn't there. Maybe it would have been with the headset, but the communication system technology wouldn't have been there. How quickly can you get satellites up with, gigabyte speeds? It just wouldn't have happened.
Well, there's
And
not enough graphics processing to handle the amount of communication between people in a metaverse situation like that. Like you would basically have to turn every GPU miner in the world into some kind of like, graphics processing unit for a metaverse, communications thing.
and then even then, it's not going
And
to
it
work.
still won't even be enough.
Yeah, because you first off you have latency issues. So how can you have a metaverse, a world type situation, a VR world, you're in a shooter game and all of a sudden you have, 500 MPS latency now, and you have $1 million on the line in your shooter game,
Yeah.
and you have that latency. So now you're getting into edge computing, and you're going to have to pull processing from everybody around you, and we obviously don't have that capability. We're probably 2 decades away from even beginning to think about that capability.
Hell,
So
it's not just in gaming, it's even in trading, man. Like I got screwed on a trade the other day because my internet glitched as I was like going into the trade and it totally screwed up my entries. So and then you're fighting these algorithms and that are
and
constantly
you
moving
fight
faster,
and you're
faster, faster,
fighting,
faster.
and depending
Yeah.
on what market you're trading, you're fighting computers that are across the river from New York, and the New York Stock Exchange, or across the river
Yeah.
from
So they're
Chicago and
getting
the Merc,
instant,
and
instant
yeah,
data,
they're high frequency trading,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, this is where you have to understand technology in the context of all this stuff, money included. I mean, money is now technology, finance is technology, and it's like economics is technology, the economy is technology, and how does it all interact? And you mentioned diesel. Well, what happens if you're in a country that you don't have access to energy because you have to import it from somewhere? I mean, if you're
Yeah.
energy independent going forward the next 10, 20 years, you got no problem. But if you're importing all your energy, and the world's police force, the United States, is now going home because, well, we're just going home, and we're all fucked up. So now, if you're a China, let's say, and you import the majority of your energy, well, what's to say that India can't just? I mean, the Indian Navy could take out oil tankers and stop them. And guess where all those oil tankers from the Mideast have to go to get to China? They go through the Indian Ocean, right by India. Well, the Indians could stop that. Now, the Indians won't if the United States says don't stop that. But if the United States says we don't give a shit, do whatever the hell you want. We don't care. We're too busy fighting, the left versus the right here. Um, then the Indians are saying, okay, well, maybe we'll stop you.
Which
And
we're
that
going to talk about the left versus right here in a little bit. But yeah, no, that's and well, what I'm already seeing is that you've got even got the Saudis that are like already turning. They're starting to offer up oil for different, for different stuff at this point, and they're already talking with the BRICS countries and all this kind of stuff, trying to get on board there. That's dangerous, for a lot of things, for at least for us. But what a lot of Americans forget is we've got it. We've got the resources to just kind of sit on our own little continent and just chill. We don't need it.
the United States has had a major advantage.
Yeah, my
We we
uncle,
get
my
we we get to mess around with the rest of the world and not have it blow back on us, because first off,
yeah,
we got two big oceans separating us from everybody else.
hmm
We
I
got the
watched
most
a
power we got
yeah,
the most powerful navy in the world by orders of magnitude, like tenfold.
Oh
We,
yeah.
we couldn't build a vessel for the next 50 years and nobody else would catch up to us. We got the largest economy. We got the most advanced banking and financial system in the world. We're the most advanced technologically. And we have the resources for both energy and food. We can
Hmm.
grow our own food and we have energy production.
Hmm.
And then we got the Mexicans, which that takes care of our lower end manufacturing problem because, our demographics were high, upper level education. We're not cut out. We're cut out for high level manufacturing. We can produce high end silicon chips for like airplanes and stuff. That we can do because, you build a $20 billion plant and put, $300 million equipment in there, you're good to go. But you want to build, stuff at the low end for your thermostat in your or the chip in your thermostat. You're not going to do that in the United States. You do that in a China or a Thailand or somewhere like that. Well, we can do that in Mexico. Mexico has beautiful demographics and a crappy education system.
Yeah.
That means they got a lot of young people who can work in these factories, and the cost of labor will be a lot less than it would be in the US. So that's the advantage the US has economically and
They just don't do it.
on a grand scale. So, well, we still outproduce more. We still have more energy and food production than most of the world, and we still export more than most of the world. So it's
Yeah.
really not a problem for the United States. Canada and Mexico, because of their proximity, they're right in there with us. We got whatever the hell Trump renamed NAFTA, but that was a good policy. Then you got the other countries that have trade agreements with the United States. That's the U.S. foreign policy. That's all we give a shit about. That's all we can concern ourselves. Washington cannot agree on lunch, let alone foreign policy, and that's going to be the case for the next decade. So if you got a trade agreement with the United States, you're a favored state. We'll look after you. We have equal interest. If you don't, you're on your fucking own. So you better try to form some alliances. The problem is who do you form alliances with? Because the ones you're forming alliances with may be screwed in a few years. Because, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, the Saudis, okay, they got plenty of oil, but they don't have food.
Yeah.
And so, what if you can't move stuff, and the Saudis have to ship their oil everywhere? Well, what if the Brits all of a sudden say, you're not sending that oil anywhere? The Brits can stop Saudi oil. That's the problem these countries have. That in a world, if you want to call it deglobalized or decentralized, you move back when the United States is the most imperialistic son of a bitch on the block. When the imperialistic asshole leaves, doesn't mean imperialism left. It means there's a void. Who's going to fill it in?
Yeah.
And since there's nobody at the superpower level, other than maybe the Japanese, they could be a superpower. But Japanese has gotten deep in the pockets and gotten into bed deeply with Washington. So that's smart for them. Same with the Australians. So that's kind of forming that Pacific region tied to the US. If you don't have the superpower, what are you going to have? You're going to have regional imperial powers. And that's what we saw out of Europe for 1500 years. They just kept taking turns. You had the French and the Germans and the Spanish and the Portuguese, then the Brits. And so who's going to be the big dog? It looks like they better watch out or they'll all be speaking French because the French have the demographics, they got the manufacturing, they have the economy. Um, it's certainly not going to be Germany. It's certainly not going to be Spain. And, the EU, in my opinion, is going to fracture. So it's real interesting when you talk about deglobalization in which most people are saying is a reversal of globalization, which they mean manufacture. And yes, I agree. Products are going to be made where they're consumed. But you also have the internet, which the second you log on is global in nature. And today, a kid in Bangladesh with a laptop has an equal chance of putting an app on Apple and have 100 million people use it as somebody in Silicon Valley. So that's an interesting dynamic. Finance is international in basic. I mean, you can go onto your trading account, your TD Ameritrade or whoever the hell you trade with, and you can buy shit all over the world. You can buy stocks, you can buy commodities. I mean, okay, some stuff you might have to be approved for, but you can go into forex market, you can get into commodity futures, you can get into all this stuff that's global in nature. These banks are going globally, crypto's global in nature by default. It's global.
Yeah.
So now you have all this fracturing going on one level, but on the other level, we're going the other way. And we talk about DeFi, and it's like, okay, anybody can go buy some HBD, throw it in savings, get 20% on a decentralized blockchain with servers all over the world. And they can do that anywhere in the world as long as they have internet.
Yep.
I mean that it's just kind of a weird dichotomy that you see going on, and so in our physical world we see this separation, and that's going to cause problems. But then in the digital world, we're seeing the exact opposite: digital finance, you know, all these things that are not physical but real, and banking. You don't need branches. You don't need to go to an office to buy stock anymore, call a stockbroker. You just do it through your computer or your laptop or your phone or whatever. This is just really the weird times we're in, and I think that's what something that most people do not take into account. I listen to all the people talk about deglobalization, but they miss the technology side. Then I hear all the technology people, and it's like, but then they're missing the physical side and the geopolitics and the supply
Yeah.
chain issue and all this other stuff that's taking place. Unless they get into some type of harebrained ideology and Austrian economics, which you know
Well, it's
they
like
end up missing a big piece.
I think we're in like this like really weird, span or generation gap or whatever, that we're in both that old school physical, like we grew up without the internet, that kind of thing. And then like I've got my kids and stuff that, grew up in the internet,
Yeah, you're
and,
right.
and we're the ones that are I think, yeah, in my mind, I don't know, it sounds like you're getting a better grasp on it sometimes. And like I said, I spent 8 years working for Apple, but still at times I have that, challenge of just fully going one way or the other. I'm
What
trying
it
to
is,
integrate, but it's a frustration because all the people I deal with over here are still like old school traditional, and then all the people I deal with over here are like, nah, dude, why are you still doing this over here with the physical stuff? And it's like,
the best analogy is picture a sandwich, a ham sandwich or a
yeah,
bologna sandwich. The first piece of bread is your boomers. For
yeah,
the most part, they're anti-tech. Your second piece of bread is the millennials. They're for the most part tech. You have the meat of it is the Generation X. We could go either way because it didn't come natural for us, technology like the millennials. It was there. For us, we have to learn this. So some of the Gen X are like boomers, where they don't even know how to turn on a computer. Other aspects of Gen X, they're like the millennials, where it doesn't matter. They notice when every time the browser upgrade, they notice what changes. Most of us see a browser update. It's like, okay, as long as it didn't screw anything up, I'm happy. And we could go either way. And that also is an interesting component that you bring up for economic and all these other affairs, is because the boomers are on their way out.
yeah,
And when it comes to like money, one of the things I've learned now, you and I aren't really from the cash era. That's the boomers. Boomers are cash people.
yeah,
They really didn't really have too much with credit cards. Maybe they had one credit card, and the only debt they had was usually the mortgage. Then you got into when I got out of school, and in our era, credit cards were commonplace, and debit cards were starting to come around. But I've never used a payment app. I've never used Apple Pay. I've never used Square. I've never used. I mean, I'm going towards the boomers on this. So my conception of money is not physical cash. My conception of money is numbers on a screen because that's always what it's been, or checks, which have been around for hundreds of years.
yeah, yeah,
You get these millennials; their conception of money is a payment app. It's that, and so this is where, and this is where I have the distinction with the gold bugs, and they make these outrageous claims. And Peter Schiff, who is a millennial or is a Gen X, but he acts like a boomer, and all these gold bug people. And it's like, you do realize gold bug people are boomers. They're dying off. The millennials are not gold bugs. The idea of physical little yellow pieces of metal being a store of value is about as commonplace to these people as little green men. It
Yeah.
makes no sense to them. They grew up in a digital world. So Bitcoin, in the conversation between the two, makes a lot more sense to the millennials from a technological acceptance standpoint. The surveys bear that out, because now when you look at the surveys, they say by an order of 9 or 10 to 1, millennials favor Bitcoin to gold. Well, that makes sense because that's what they understand. And so when you look at the shift within the marketplace or the workplace or stuff like this, as the boomers lose power and millennials start to move up and gain more power, there's going to be a lot of changes like remote work and things like that, I think, become more commonplace because that's of their generation. They're happy managing based upon an algorithm that says, hey, logical dude hasn't been, working up to par, send them out a warning. Okay, they can do that. The boomers, they're not happy managing unless they see you each day. What are
Yeah.
you doing? Looking over your shoulder. And so, absolutely, this is different. And that's the problem with technology. Technology advances quicker than human embracing of it. So going back to what we said before, even if you put in a law in 2013 or 2014, all communications has to be in VR, there was going to be a percentage of the population, even if that was the law, they wouldn't have used VR no matter what. They were going to
Yeah.
sit there and say, no way, I can't figure this out.
Just because they put it into law, they're like, no,
Well,
I'm
yeah,
not going to do it.
then you got those. But I'm talking,
I'm
I
still
mean,
going to write with feathers.
yeah, if you can you see grandma using that? I mean, it's look at all the blowback against electric vehicles, and I get the grid. I get it doesn't save on carbon. I get the mining of these batteries and the materials of the batteries and the equipment to transport. I mean, it's using more fossil fuel than if you just had a fossil fuel car. I understand that, but the simple fact of the matter is batteries are for electric vehicles. You can recycle like 90% of the
Yeah.
components. I mean,
Yeah.
magnesium and lithium and all that is recyclable.
Yeah.
And so, really what you're doing is you're just producing it once and then you can use it many times. But electric vehicles make a lot of sense. Now, can the power grid handle it? Okay, that's a worthwhile discussion for another day. Is it saving anything in terms of carbon? Probably not. It may even be worse. So you can make that claim. But, the simple fact of the matter is if you ever been in a Tesla, that's a pretty sweet ride. You get the torque
Yeah.
off of that car. It's not a golf cart. That thing can fucking move.
Yeah.
And, it's just, solar. I live in a state that's putting in 30 million solar panels by 2030. It's a great idea. I'm 1,000 miles from the equator. We get 300 days of sun a year. So the utility doing that is smart. Calgary, it's probably a stupid idea
Yeah.
because you're like 3,000 miles away from the equator and, the sun doesn't even get over the trees for 4 months. So what the hell are you going to, what kind of energy are you going to get out of that? And, these are the things that you have to take a look at. And everybody wants to try to paint all this shit with one brush. And, it's not one brush. It's not one simple thing. I often talk about this with economics. And it's like, oh, well, the Fed's print money. That's what, if you're looking at any of these complex systems with just one variable, you're a moron
Yeah.
because it's not one variable. There's many variables in all of this. And sometimes, like in the case with the CPI readings, it's not even what you think. It's not the Fed that's responsible for this. It was the lockdown of the global
Yeah.
economy.
Everything's shutting
So,
down. Well, we got 5 minutes of this little segment left before we got to switch up. But yeah, no, what my issue with the EV systems are is, I was thinking about doing, getting a Tesla last year, before, when I actually had, more money than I do now after the crash. But I was thinking about getting a Tesla for you because I was doing the whole delivery service thing on the side too, because I like getting out of, getting out
mhm,
of a screen. I like getting outside, driving around, it's, my thing.
mhm.
And I was thinking about doing something like that, it was going to be a good investment at the time and everything. But yeah, I held up on it. I held up on it after I took my trip from out west back east, and did my round trip with my kids last summer. We would have been stranded if I was in an electric
Well,
vehicle, because there's
let me ask you
stretches
this,
that there's just
because
there were no charge ports, and I
let,
was
let, let,
looking
let,
for them, kind of thing.
you're right, but here's the deal. You're an old bastard like me. You remember when cell phones had drop zones,
Oh
and
yeah, they still
you went
do.
in, well, they probably do out where you are. I mean, there's really none around me, but you went through areas where you didn't have cell phone coverage for long stretches, even in
Yeah,
heavily populated areas, because they simply didn't have the range, they didn't have the towers, they didn't have enough of it up. And over the years, they filled it in, and that's what's going to happen with these charging stations. So, it is an
it's gonna
electric
come.
vehicle an ideal. Like you look at trucking, is electric vehicle great to go from Jacksonville, an electric truck from Jacksonville to Los Angeles? Probably not.
Not yet.
But if you're a Pepsi bottling plant and sending it to a distributor 80 miles away and doing that round trip 3 times in the night, probably is okay.
It would be good for like city traveling, like city vans and stuff like that when we get up there, at that point too. My second thing before we go into the next segment and we can talk about that is the fact that my problem is, the automatic upgrading, and most people aren't going to know what's in those upgrades and what can they do with those upgrades. So, you know, if you want to go somewhere, somebody can be like, nah, you ain't going there, kind of thing, and turn your car the other direction. That's my kind of fear, and that kind of thing. Because it's just really because the global world that we're in, they want so much control. They could put that into an EV vehicle and we would never know what would happen the night that we were sleeping and our car upgraded while it was plugged into our garage. You never know. So we can get into that in the next segment, or we can move along to something else. So we'll get right
I
back with
have for
everybody.
you is you just said they want more control. Who is they?
I mean, global elites, politicians, that kind of thing, with the way that government is basically working in with corporations, we've seen recently in the last couple of weeks, it's apparent now, and there's back doors that the government has to censor us on social media, that kind of thing. What would be to stop them from infiltrating these electric car companies and say, hey, you need to put in these upgrades into these, into these car, firmware or whatever, the software that's in the cars, shoot them out, this time of night, and then they have a back door into your car and can basically reroute you wherever they want you to go. That would be my personal fear. But I'm just that kind of guy. I wear that, tinfoil hat every now and then.
Well, and that's the problem, because when people talk about the elites, and well, historically, if you want to look at who was really in control, it's the bankers, because they control the monetary
That's
system.
true.
They
Yeah.
they they have the ledger, and so the bankers were the ones who were calling all the shots. But as we see, they're really not. And then people want to talk about tech, and well, they can get into this, that, or the other thing. Well, we know, and I don't know if they ever succumb, but basically, Tim Cook and Apple told uh, Hillary Clinton and the Democrats to go fuck themselves,
I
and
was
said,
proud of them on that one. I was
you
working
know,
for Apple during
and
that.
so
And
suddenly
yeah.
now you have Elon Musk, who was, a greeny government, lefty, Democrat voting loyalist, who he's obviously on he left the reservation. So his idea of complying above and beyond the obvious, it may not be there. And then, of course, you have the Chinese companies and I mean, this is the problem with like the idea of AI and Skynet. It's like, well, AI, AGI, it's going to take over. It's going to be our overlord. It's like, you realize there's like 100,000 different companies working on this, and they're all writing their own code, and none of this interacts with each other. So, what Google's doing is different than what Amazon's doing, which is different from what Tencent is doing, which is different than the NSA, which is different than some dude in Bangladesh hacking away at code, writing up algorithms that who knows what the hell that guy's trying to do. So, you get all of these things, and it just that's where when people talk about decentralization, it's like if you're in the digital world, you're getting automatically into decentralization because you're getting into all these other platforms. And even in blockchain, Hive doesn't talk to Ethereum. So Ethereum being as centralized with the
Yeah.
validators doesn't affect Hive whatsoever. Doesn't
Mm-mm.
affect HBD. Doesn't whatsoever. Doesn't affect the people on Hive. So that's where even within the centralized industry, which I believe crypto is for the most part, you do have the green sprouts of decentralization and distribution, which will keep growing. I think going back to what we started the last segment, I think Hive really needs to expand its DeFi and offer true DeFi.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I love tossing them up for you because you do a really great way of, explaining stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's just more or less my thing right now is it's not ready. The infrastructure is not fully ready for the world to go fully
It's
EV or
not.
anything like that. So it will
Well, and,
get
and here's
there.
another thing that agrees with you, and it makes me laugh when they say, "Oh, well, the rate of adoption is this, so by 2025, 2026, 50% of all vehicles will be electric." It's like, where the fuck you getting all those batteries? And by the way, who's building all those cars? I mean,
Yeah,
have you seen GM's build out rate? I mean, they'll be lucky to get to 100 by 2026.
yeah,
Ford, they want to build 80,000 in 2024. I mean, it's only the Chinese and the US and Tesla that are scaling up their production, and China's going into a recession, so their EV companies are going to go down from like 300 to 10, which
yeah.
it has to do.
Neos,
You can't support 300 fucking companies,
nah,
so
man.
they have to contract. And that's where those people are just, well, the doubling curve, and it's like, who's going to build all those cars? Tesla's not going to be scaling up. They're hoping to get to maybe 20 million by 2030, and that might be laughable. Well, somebody will build it. The Japanese aren't. The Koreans aren't scaling. I mean, who's scaling?
Well, I mean, and
So,
then you've got to face the reality of who the hell is going to buy them all. I mean, because these cars are not cheap, and you got people that are
well,
like,
as you scale and the costs come down and different things like that in
well,
eight
that'll
more years.
happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll
So,
that'll happen. But at the same time, you're gonna have a grand scale of the population that's not gonna, give up the vehicle that they have because it runs perfectly well, kind of thing. I mean, you,
in the United States, if their payment stays the same, you can put them in a new vehicle. They'll sign up, even if it's a 30-year car loan. They don't give a shit.
well, I guess it depends on who you're talking to. So, but yeah, no, that's true. But I mean, but it's actually I've been seeing a shift, like more and more people that I've been talking to, different parents and stuff, and it's really just because of economic stuff. People are not spending on stuff like that. It's like,
Yeah.
well, my car still runs great, or
Yeah.
they're still rocking like an iPhone 7. It's because the damn thing still works. Why do I need an iPhone 14? It's like,
Well, and that's part of the problem with this inflation discussion. It's the solution for higher prices is higher prices, and when you have higher energy prices, especially oil, that has a ripple effect, especially on food. And guess what? Two things people can't get household budgets can't get away from: energy and food.
energy
So
and
if
food.
more of
Mhm.
your household budget's going to energy and food, you got to start cutting somewhere. And like you said, it may be, well, I'm not going to upgrade every 2 years on my phone like I used to. I'm going to wait 3 or 4 years. I'm not going to go get another car and take on a $400 or $500 car payment. I'll just go with what I have. I don't know if anybody goes to the movies anymore after COVID, but you stop going to movies, you stop eating out, you stop doing all that stuff. You start dropping the Netflix subscription or the
Yeah.
Hulu subscription or the extra subscription. You know, when household budgets get strained, something has to go. They don't go buy a new blouse or a new suit or new pairs of shoes or whatever. And that, I think, is a reality, and that doesn't show up in the numbers yet, but just
It
anecdote
will.
and from an anecdotal level, that's foreshadowing what the economy is going to face. And as more people get laid off, that only gets worse because the fear of being laid off causes that same behavior, even if you haven't had to adjust your household budget. The fear of getting laid off says, maybe I should.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's what's going to take place. I mean, as I said, Meta announced they're laying off X number of thousands of people. And by the way, those aren't minimum. I would imagine they're minimum wage earners. They're probably pretty healthy salaries.
Yeah.
3,500 people from Twitter going. The mortgage companies have been laying off left and right for obvious reasons. It just, you start to see some of this echo through the economy, and you're just like, okay, well, that's stuff you gotta watch. And the
Yeah.
unemployment number, that's the last thing to jump up because companies move people to part-time, they slow hiring, or they don't hire anymore just in case things bounce back.
Or
The
it's
sun
like, oh, job, or people, there were more jobs created or whatever. And it's like, well, actually, what I'm seeing on ground level is that people are losing higher level jobs and having to go and get a job at Subway.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Subway is getting more, you got all these, because there's fast food joints, they're hiring 14, 15. I've seen $17 an hour at KFC, and they're, but people are losing, these higher level jobs. You got, you got your millennials that are really trying to, and I'm at what you call the elder side of the millennials. I'm kind of like, I don't know how they judge that crap. I lean into Gen X because that's who I identify with. But yeah, so you got a lot of these people that don't have a lot of other skills offline, or outside of any kind of financial stuff or
Hmm.
anything like that, and they don't know what to do. Like myself, I've been looking at jobs, I mean, just to get a part-time job somewhere, just to have some extra cash flow coming in. So yeah, crypto markets still suck, honestly. And trying to trade here and there, make some extra money, throwing out some posts and stuff, but it's hard to make a full-time living in this realm. So but it's like, I go and look at these random places to get part-time jobs, and yeah, I'm having to work with teenagers and stuff like that. It's like, do I really want to deal with that? So
Well, but
luckily
then that
gas
also
prices are coming down a little bit, and I can just get back to some delivery work, and I'll be all good to go on that. But
that also gets into the cost of living, and you have somebody who is a mortgage broker, or work for a mortgage company, used to pulling down 75,000, let's say 80,000, and they lived in, maybe the wife worked as a school teacher or something, they're used to combine pulling 100 and a quarter, and they live $150,000 lifestyle. Well, now he loses his job, or the commissions dry up,
mhm.
or the bonuses dry up, and he's making 25 or 30, and she's still making her 40 or 45, but you ain't going to be living that $150,000 lifestyle.
No.
And unfortunately, they're locked in at 125. They can't get rid of, because they got the two cars financed, and they got the high mortgage, and all that shit. And that's where the developed world mindset is that, oh well, we'll just take all this on. And that's where things just can really cascade out of control, because that brings up things such as defaults, and then you start to see the card defaults go up, you start to see foreclosures go up when people start making decisions: do I make my car payment or my house payment? When you're at that level, then things are going to start spinning out of control.
And I admittedly was in that kind of position back in around the 2008 time frame. I had a window tinting business that absolutely dropped to crap, and I had to get a job as a server. Went back into serving tables, at a restaurant. And it was got my day started at California Pizza Kitchen. And but yeah, that was horrible. I went, I lost my van. That sucked. Sitting there having my kids in the living room watching the repo guys come and picking my car up, like and that's a hard thing to get out of, you have to, therefore you're paying cash for everything, at that point, you got to scrounge up and go
Yeah,
buy a new car, because you kind of screwed. It's like, what do you
yeah,
do? Do you keep your house warm, or do you keep paying payments on this car? It's like, well, I got to keep the house warm, keep the kids fed, that's more important. So
yeah. And
is what it
that's
is, and that was like the 2008 foreclosure stuff. Like, I moved to South Florida like a couple of years after that, so it's like I got to see the full aftermath of everything, and all these empty houses and just construction that was just stopped. You get walls up and then there's just no roof,
Yep.
nothing like that, because they just, okay, we're done.
Yeah, the developer went broke,
Yeah.
and then the house got foreclosed on. The people moved out, and the house stood for years. No air
Hmm.
conditioning and mold, and a lot of shit. They ended up having to just bulldoze, because the foreclosure process took 5 and 7 years in some
Well,
instances.
there were still houses like that in Cape Coral area when Ian came through, because I had a friend of mine who was like, there was two houses that had been sitting unfinished, basically since like 2010 or 2011 across the street from them, and they finally got blown away.
Yeah, I mean, it's Yeah, because that's what happens when, I mean, it's like watching China. It's like, you realize when, like, in Evergrande and when some of these other companies, if the CCP is going to let some of them fail, which they haven't given any indication they're going to save their asses, that's exactly what's happening. Is, in fact, in China it's worse because they not only stop construction, these developers are going and nuking these empty apartment buildings just so they can sell the land
Yeah.
because they need the money. So it gets to be a very interesting dynamic when you don't have access to the resources you need to keep everything spinning because you have economic contraction. And I still stand by, globally, we're suffering from a shortage of dollars and euro dollars. And we've been suffering that way since the great financial crisis 15 years ago, 14 years ago. And we have no recovery in sight
Yeah.
until we get another form of quality collateral outside of US treasuries, because there's just not enough US treasuries out there to get the wholesale banking globally going the way it needs to go. You're going to keep having contraction. And then you add in the demographics, you add in the EU imploding, you add in China maybe having a major slowdown. It does not look real good from that perspective globally, that we're going to be able to withstand a global shakeout. And
Well,
that's going to mean defaults, that's going to mean foreclosures, and that's going to mean a lot of shit's got to be written off.
yeah. And
And
you
that
know, I mean,
hurts.
and it, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, as far as a political shift. Because what's crazy, and being on Hive and talking, being in the crypto industry, I've never before talked with such a globally wide group of people. And with a couple of projects that I'm working on, talking with people like in Africa and stuff like that, and they're so involved with our political system, it's not even funny.
Yeah,
Because
but they don't realize our political system doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot.
eh, but it, I mean, the rest of the world, it's like, they looking at us and seeing what's happening, and it's like, because it causes chaos in a lot of ways. But
Yeah, but you know,
it's more or less what's going on behind the scene. They're like, hey,
exactly.
it's called the Kansas City Shuffle. It's like, we're gonna shift over here. We're gonna let y'all, play around with y'all's little elections and stuff over here, but really back over here, we fucking all the shit up.
Yeah,
You
yeah. I mean, you think
so
our fucking policy on Ukraine's going to change? Whether
no,
you agree with it or not, but it's not going to change based upon the election results tomorrow. It doesn't matter.
no.
Do you
It's like
think
I'm
that?
talking to my kids. My kids are voting age now, like both of them, and my daughter's like trying to fill out her voting form last night. She's like, the hell are these people doing? Like she even got on the phone with my sister. She's like, is this candidate really doing stuff for nurses? And my sister's like, hell no. It's like kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
it's like who,
politicians are, they're lawyers and they're about as worthless as economists.
and
Those are
that's what I,
probably the
yeah.
two most worthless beings on the planet because
It's
they
like I
don't
was
do
talking to
anything.
my 86-year-old grandmother on her birthday the other day, and it's like Adam, I don't even know how the heck I'm going to vote. She goes, I don't trust none of these sleazy sons of bitches. I was just like, damn,
No,
man.
it's
It's like,
it's a
wow.
mirage.
Yeah. A-
It's
And the thing is people are finally starting to see it, and it's people that you don't realize. The thing is that there's such a loud voice on social media for one side or the other, and they're trying to cause this division online. But you go offline, you go and talk to regular old people out there in the world,
well, that's
and
go to a sports site for a team. Pick any team. Pick,
yeah,
the Kansas City Chiefs, and you go on their blog. And if you just go based upon that blog, you think Kansas City Chiefs were the biggest assholes, and fans were the biggest assholes in the world. Because what do you get on there? You'll get the 5% of the Chiefs fan base who are just total assholes
yeah,
and scream real loud. Now that's not indicative of 95% of the fan base. 95% of the fan base, you probably have a rational discussion about football, but you can't with those idiots. That's
unless
what you
you're in
get on
Alabama.
social media about politics. That's what you get on TV and CNN and Fox and all these other shows and The View and all this other shit. They're fucking morons.
Yeah,
And so what you have is you have a bunch of ideologues who are just puppets who really don't know what's going on anyway. They get their paycheck. I mean, it's like anytime these Democrats, and I'll pick on them because they're the biggest hypocrites with it. You know, oh well, the 1%. It's like, you assholes, you're in the 1% if you're in Congress. You know, you can walk in there broke, but you come out a multimillionaire. Bernie Sanders talks about the 1%. It's like, dude, you
So,
got higher net worth than 99.99% of
well, you
America.
know, well, you notice after his book, that his wording changed. He used to go the billionaires and the millionaires. It's all the billionaires and the millionaires, and then it changed after his book, and after he became a millionaire, just became the billionaires. So
Yeah, well, and it's like the right's no better. I mean, they're just as corrupt. So,
yeah,
the bottom line is, long term, we're running into a crisis in confidence in government around the world, and I don't know where it's going to start. I have a feeling it's going to be the EU implosion
yeah,
that leads it. But what you have governments that made so many promises that they can't keep. Now, the United States, we can keep it because, as I said, we're global. We're pristine collateral. We can keep selling our debt, so we can. Worst case scenario, Irvin Fisher spoke about this 100 years ago. We can Ponzi debt. We can keep creating more debt to pay off the old debt. We can go that route for decades. Europe can't. The New York banks aren't even buying European debt right now. So you look at a country like Spain, which has demographic issues, and they have a pension plan. Forget Cadillac. This thing's Rolls Royce.
yeah.
There's no way they can sustain it. So you have so many promises politicians have made that are unsustainable, that people are going to take it on the lip, and they're not going to be happy about it. And if you're a politician, and I'll tell you where one area, if you're a politician in France and you piss the people off, you got problems, because when it comes to throwing a revolution, the French know how to throw a revolution. In America, we're fat, dumb, and happy. In France, they'll pull your ass
Yeah,
out
right.
through a window and cut your head off in the street. Um, and that's what I think is, you're going to start to see a lot of this civil unrest as people realize, well, I put my faith in the government and my pension got canceled. Well, yeah, because the government was broke and they can't sell their debt. And it's like, you can keep everything going as long as you can keep rewriting that debt and redoing that debt. And a lot of this $300 trillion debt globally, yes, it will be redone. Yes, it will be refied. It will. A lot of it will keep going, but a lot of it won't. And that which won't is going to be problematic. So that's where the question comes. And going back to the separation and the haves and the have-nots going forward, who can keep their debt going and who can't? And that's why I always write about and talk about the EU being ground zero for the implosion, even ahead of China, because I think they're screwed.
Yeah.
They got problems. And then China has the advantage that CCP could just let a quarter of the population starve and not suffer any consequences. So, that's a little different. When you have that very rigid militaristic authoritative regime. But the EU has those same Marxist ideals that they've implemented over 50 years, and it's coming back to bite them. Eventually you got to pay for all this
But
shit.
they call
And
it democracy. And
well,
democracy's on the ballot. Task. Haven't you heard that one yet? That's
well,
that's the that's the new one.
democracy is just mob rule.
Yeah.
And democracy in the EU is a joke because Brussels decides everything. I mean, people can't even vote on who's in charge in Brussels. So, the
Well,
bottom line.
well, I remember when Bernie was coming out was like 2014, whenever he started running or whatever, and people were calling him a democratic socialist, and it's like that
Yeah,
just
well,
seems like a
that's all
giant
well and good
oxy
when you.
fucking moron to me.
Well,
It's
that's all
like,
well and good when you have all the money to spend, and
yeah,
it's like, and the United States, as I said, can get away with it. I mean, we could roll out $10 trillion worth of debt right now in the next week, and it'll be sold, but it'll be swallowed up by the international financial system.
mhm,
The ECB rolls out a $1,000 bond. Nobody outside Europe's touching.
mhm.
Nobody. I
No.
mean, that's the difference. The Italians roll out debt, nobody's touching it. So, if you call JP Morgan and you want to run a short term secured transaction, don't show up with European debt. They're not even gonna give you a high interest rate and over collateralization rate of 125%. They're just saying we're not touching
But
it. Go
Bitcoin was supposed to fix this. What happened with that?
Bitcoin was sold on the gold bug lie. Bitcoin
Exactly.
was the gold bug lie. It was supposed to. Bitcoin was sold based upon high CPI, high inflation, so it'll go to 600,000 and the dollar will crash. Well, you had 40-year highs in the CPI, PPI, PCE, whatever metric you use, all 40-year highs, and Bitcoin went from 66,000 to 17. So what happened? It was a lie. The second thing that happened, the dollar has exploded globally. These assholes are trying to sell. And by the way, gold went from $2,200 an ounce to where is it now? 1,650. Gold
Yeah,
should
like
be at
16.
$4,000 an ounce with 9% CPI.
Well, yeah,
The
according
re-
to Jim Rickards and what's his name, Kiyosaki, man, gold's supposed to be $20,000 right now.
Yeah, Peter Schiff. You
Yeah,
got
it's shifty. Yeah.
you got the three Goldbug Stooges. I give you credit on Jim Rickards. Most people don't pick up on him, but yeah, Rickards, Peter Schiff, and now Kiyosaki's joined the circus.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
these people are just. I mean, they're dangerous.
Larry, Moe, and Curly.
And so what they're talking about is Bitcoin is going to save the entire financial system. No, it's not. We're already in deflationary money. What the fuck do you guys think's going to happen if we converted everything to Bitcoin? Everything would crash.
Yeah.
When you don't have enough money to sustain growth, because money is just a tool for collaboration. I give you $50,000 for your business. You can use that $50,000 to grow your business. I give you 500,000. Odds are you could probably grow your business by orders of magnitude more than the 50. And
Yeah.
if I give you 5 million, it may not be a 10-to-1 each time, but it's still going to be orders of magnitude more. It's the same thing for the economy. You need the money out there. Well, central bank reserves are not broad scale money. It doesn't get into the economy. So we're dealing with deflationary or fixed money that the banking system isn't making loans. So this is why we got declining growth rates. And ultimately, I think we're going to end up in many areas getting contracting growth rates where things go negative. And these assholes want to keep saying Bitcoin and all this other stuff, gold and silver and all this stuff. It's like these people are dealing with an ideology and a tinfoil hat that isn't out there.
No, see, my tinfoil hat, I don't do silver and gold. I mean, I still got like 2, maybe 3 ounces of silver, but I sold all mine. My son's actually still really interested in silver and gold. He just likes it, But
As a hedge, there's nothing
yeah,
wrong with
it's
silver
like,
as gold as a hedge. And if you want to buy,
but
1% of
you
your
know what
gold,
for me has done better than silver and gold? Bullets and emergency food. the
yeah.
just
Well,
the cost
yeah,
of it has gone up.
just the cost of a can of tuna fish. If you invested $1,000 in
Well,
tuna
no,
fish or
I
canned
bought a
beans a year ago,
I bought a
it's
bunch of buckets of the Mountain House emergency food. It lasts until like 2050, so it's like a 30-year investment. Oh yeah, no, I bought. I think I'm up already like 25, almost 30% on that shit.
I mean, every time I go to the supermarket, I buy more tuna fish. I think I'm up. I
Yeah,
got like
yeah,
500
right.
cans of tuna fish. I got 1,000. I'm up, 25, 30% on that. Yeah, it's again, it goes back to logical, dude. It goes back to this premise. People don't understand money. I mean, how often do you hear the printing press goes burr? It's like, what the fuck are you people talking about?
Yeah,
No, no,
I
well,
got
they're
it. I
printing
got
all
into
these
that.
dollars. It's like, no, they don't print dollars. The commercial banking system does when they make
Yeah,
loans.
yeah.
Well, the Fed doesn't make loans. You don't have a master account at the Fed. You got an account with Wells Fargo or whoever. I mean, that's who creates the money.
And you were
The
one of the
money
ones that
supply.
got me out of that mentality. I was in that mentality at first when they were printing the stimulus checks and all that kind of stuff in the beginning. I'm like, oh, money go burr, because that's what everybody's, screaming. And I'm like, and then you were like, hold on, wait a minute, that's not actually what's going on. So like, I had to step
No,
back and I had to step back and
How's that?
kind of
How is
rewire my thinking.
How is the Fed or the Treasury creating bonds, creating dollars? How's that any different than when General Electric or Tesla or Apple sells bonds?
Yeah,
They're sold for existing dollars.
yeah,
So it's not creating any more dollars. They're sold for existing dollars. Then the money comes into the Fed's account or the Treasury's account at the Fed, and they send out checks. It's just moving money around. It's not creating any more money. And so, well, the Fed creates these the reserves. Well, so what? They put it on Bank of America's balance sheet. Well,
yeah,
Bank of America can lend more. Bank of America doesn't want to lend to begin with. The economy sucks. They're
yeah,
telling you that. They haven't been lending in 15 freaking years.
yeah.
1.03% growth in the money supply based upon loans in average in the last 15 years in the United States. By the way, the population is average 0.76 growth. So it's barely outpacing population. We're not even talking the growth of the economy. We're not even talking technology and investing in all that other stuff. We're just talking the population. So that's where Peter Schiff, Jim Rickards, Robert Kiyosaki, all these gold bug people, all these crypto people, they don't know how shit works. And it's just, I mean, this is fundamental. It's not, it's not rocket science. It's very easy to figure out. I mean, go figure out how your currency is produced. And again, not every country, not every currency operates under fractional reserve banking. But Japan, the ECB, Britain, Canada, the United States, they all operate on it. China supposedly does, but I don't believe there's much line between the CCP and anything in China, so I exclude them. Now are things maybe different in Nigeria? Yeah, I mean I don't really follow how their central bank works, and so
Yeah.
maybe they do things differently.
Apparently, they're
Zimbabwe,
extremely corrupt. They're corrupt as well. So
yeah, I mean Zimbabwe, maybe the
something
central bank
similar.
could just print up the currency, but you get into these major economies, that's how they operate, and
Yeah,
so that's why when everybody says don't fight the Fed, I'm like, why? Don't even pay attention to the Fed. They're just talk. I mean, that's all they can do. Powell cannot make the commercial banks lend. That's why
yeah.
he has to play these little games. And oh, we print the money. Well, do you print dollars? Why didn't
It's market manipulation because every time he gets up now, it's some
that
kind of
that
now it used to not be so much of a thing, for the FOMC conference, whatever the meetings that they have. I guess it was every month, but now it's like,
eight times a year?
and now it's like, a major, it's like, oh, what's gonna happen, and you can watch it, and everybody's trying to trade on it, so that's,
Well,
and it's
and
really just
that
come out in the last couple of years, so.
well, they've always been public. You can read the transcripts. The problem is
I
the
just don't think
Fed.
it's been as much of an attention grabber as it has
Well,
been in the last couple of years
yeah,
since
because
the inflation is a big issue
yeah,
these days.
well, and you're looking for the Fed to solve something that they didn't cause.
Yeah,
Which Powell, one of the few honest statements he's made is he's come out and said, "Well, us raising interest rates isn't going to get more oil out of the ground, but okay, we'll do it." Um, the challenge is the Fed does what's called foreshadowing. They have to foreshadow for their policies to work. The market has to pick up and do it. So it was like when everybody threw a shit fit when the Fed said they were going to buy securities directly. Guess what the market did? They went in and bought all the securities. They went and bought the private debt. The Fed didn't buy any. They didn't
yeah,
have to. The market solved it because everybody said the Fed said we're going to do it, and so everybody tried to front run the Fed. And the
yeah.
Fed ended up saying, okay, well, we got the securities out bought that we wanted. We're not buying any. It was like
Hold it
interest
up.
rates.
Yep.
The Fed said we're going to raise interest rates. They said in December that we're going to start in March. And what happened to interest rates? They started going up. Wait a second. The Fed didn't raise interest rates till March, but in December they started moving up. Why? The market took care of it. So by the time the Fed decided to move up interest rates, the mortgage rates had already gone up. So they just moved them up.
Yeah.
Fed Fed doesn't do anything. And by the way, the interest rates will drop. The market will drop the interest rates long before the Fed decides to reverse course because the market will realize there's no reason to have interest rates any higher. You don't have the money to sustain it. You don't have the economic activity out there.
Yeah.
So
This is really not. Well, it'll be really interesting. We're down to we got about 6.5 minutes left. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see, the kind of shift, what happens in the political landscape in the next few days. So it'll be cool to catch up on Monday and see what happens after the elections. Not sure if anything grand will happen or if it's just a bunch of political theater and that kind of thing, generally, as it always
My
is,
opinion is, I
but
don't vote, but my opinion is I hope the Republicans take one of the houses of Congress so those assholes can't do anything and they just
exactly.
argue all the time. And I am and for the last 10 years, I've been very much a proponent of the splitting of government so they do
Abstain.
nothing.
Yep.
And
I
if they have
abstain
to come
myself. So
together
yep.
on, if they come together on, have to come together on something major, they can do that. But outside of that, you know, just let them go in circles
It's pretty
and the
much just a
country's
giant
better off.
uniparty is at this point. So
It really is. It is theater, and it's like, but at least the fringe stuff, they one side will argue against the other, and then they'll just cancel each other out, and they can't do crap, and that's probably the best thing. And I don't care which is in Congress or which is in the White House. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you got the three-headed bastard, and that's all they do is they're politicians.
it's all appalling. It's all chest again. Like I watched, I think who was it, Mark Moss. It kind of broke it down, and it's basically like the three entities that run the planet, and then it just shit runs downhill from there. And it's basically the WEF, the UN, and the WHO, the World Health Organization. They basically just shit down on everybody else, kind of thing. Where the bankers are kind of the Bank of International Settlements are kind of at the top of there, and then it kind of goes from there. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean that's really historically what's happened, but then again, you start to get
Basically, governments are just stooges and pawns, and then
well, they are, but then you're going to get again, you're going to get if there is a fracturing globally of things, which it certainly is. Whether you say it's technology, geopolitics, the hatred between the West and Russia and China, whatever you base it upon, there is no doubt that the way things were in 2019 will not happen again. So, what does that do to the power structure around the world? It totally opens things up to change. Now, again, the United States leaving, okay, you didn't like the United States, but be careful of who's in your region who changes. Because if you're all of a sudden in South America, okay, yeah, we got rid of the United States. Yeah, but maybe the nutcase in Venezuela takes over. I mean, it won't be Venezuela, it'll be Argentina or Chile or somebody like that. But you may not like that solution.
yeah,
So you better be careful. And it's going to be, as we were talking from a macro level, it's going to be very interesting in the physical world how things are progressing in the power structures. Then you add in the digital world. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, what do they really do to Facebook? I mean, yeah, you get the EU making some type of regulations, but that's just a slap. And by the time the regulations dry, Facebook's figure out 10 ways around it anyway.
yeah.
So, I mean, really, what did, Apple told Hillary to go fuck off. So what are you going to do to these companies? What ultimately is anybody going to do to Tesla and Elon Musk? You can try to find them and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like, if you want Tesla cars and you're Australia and you're all pissed off that he's laying off uh, Twitter employees, well, are you going to take that? And you're also buying batteries for your utilities, by the way, your peaker plants. Are you going to take the chance as a politician of saying, "Oh, well, you're going to do this, and because you're firing those people, you're going to rehire them, you're going to give them raises, you're going to pay these fines," and he may just say, "You'll never see a Tesla in your country for the next 10 years." And oh, by the way, those batteries that you're getting, those are back ordered for the next 15 years. And oh, by the way, I was going to put a plant, not only a car plant, but a battery plant on every continent. We're not putting one on yours.
Yeah.
I mean, really, oh, by the way, you want that Starlink? Uh, the the clouds are blocking it. We can't get it there. I mean, maybe that's too much power for one dude to have, but that's what's shaping up with his companies, and they're all separate companies, and they all have separate investors. And I personally don't think Elon Musk is the worst of the bunch. I mean,
Nah, he's not the
I think he's
worst.
a pretty transparent dude. I mean, he's not a
I
He
think he's
doesn't
made. I
have
think he's made a shift over the last few years, and now he's like, yeah, like you said earlier. He was one of those radical lefty guys, and then now he's just basically made a complete shift over, and he's like, hold up. So I
well,
don't know.
I
Maybe
think I think I think as they went more radical, it's kind of like a decade ago. We had this with the Tea Party on the right. The
yeah,
more radical these affiliations get, the more people who aren't that radical sit there and say, "What the hell are you people talking about?" And
yeah,
right now it's the left going nuts. A decade ago it was the right going nuts, and it'd just be the same thing as if all of a sudden the
it's
Republicans
just a
went
circle.
ultra religious and went really radical right with the religion. Most people who vote Republican would be sitting there saying, "What are you jackasses doing?"
Yeah,
you
right.
know and I think that's what somebody like Elon Musk is. I mean, would he lean left? I think overall probably so. I don't really know, but is he far out radical tyrannical leftist? No, I don't think he
Nah.
is. He's a business person and that type of stuff. And
Well,
I think he has a problem with that, and that's where he's realized, I'm a businessman and you people are just absolutely nuts.
right on. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how things progress, with everything with Twitter and then with all the elections. So, Task, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. We're going to get cut off here in a second. But yeah, so until next Monday, we're going to
Ciao.
gather it. We're going to talk later. Peace out, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Ciao.